I worked on Lady Gaga's Chromatica ball, and what crawled out of her dressing room that night still haunts me. It wasn't some nightmare or a wild rumor, it was real. Something wrong came out of there. Something I've never been able to shake. Every night, it's in my head. Every day, I feel it. I've kept this inside for too long, but I can't anymore. I need you to understand. I need you to know what happened. This happened in 2019. It was one of those tours everyone in the world had their eyes on. The world was buzzing with excitement. Lady Gaga was at the height of her career, unstoppable, larger than life. And for a while, I thought that I'd made it. Working for Gaga's team, being part of her magic, I thought I was special. I thought it was just another gig. But I was wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. Gaga's tour wasn't like any other. Sure, there were the bright lights, the explosive performances, the fans screaming in every language. But behind all that, there was something darker. Something I wasn't prepared for. Her dressing room, her space, was unlike anything I'd ever seen. You'd think it'd be full of mirrors, makeup kits, shoes, the usual glitz and glamour. But it wasn't. It was sterile, cold. The walls were black, and there were candles everywhere. Not the pretty kind, either. These were big, dark, heavy candles that looked like they had been burning for years. And then there was the door. I never saw it locked, but it was always sealed somehow. No one could just walk in, even when Gaga wasn't in there. You had to have permission, a special pass, the kind of pass that wasn't handed out casually. The first time I worked near her dressing room, I didn't think much of it. I was focused on getting my job done, not noticing the little things. But as time went on, I started to see the signs. There were whispers among the crew, the kind of whispers that send chills down your spine. Don't knock. Twice on the door. Never look under the vanity table. Don't ever stop the music when she's rehearsing, no matter what. At first, I thought it was just superstition. Big artists, big egos, big rituals. But then I started to notice things. Little things that didn't make sense. The doorman, for one, he was always there, but he wasn't like the other staff. He didn't have a normal face. I know that sounds crazy, but I swear it. I'd look at him and it was like I was staring into a void. His eyes were gone. Not just covered or hidden, but empty. Like there was nothing behind them. Just an endless black hole. I tried not to look too closely, but I couldn't help it. And when I did, I saw it. The way his head tilted slightly to the side as if he was watching me, following my every movement. But when I tried to ask someone else about him, no one would answer. They'd look at me like I was the crazy one. But it wasn't just him. It was the whole vibe of that place. It felt wrong, like the walls were closing in. Like the air was heavier than it should have been. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that there was something off, something dark, waiting in the corners of that dressing room. But every night, I'd feel it, like a pressure building up around me. Something was there, something I couldn't see but could feel. And then the whispers got louder. One night, I was running a quick errand backstage, delivering a last-minute prop to Gaga's dressing room. It was supposed to be a simple task, quick in and out. But when I got there, the atmosphere shifted. The air was colder than usual, and the door Her door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't help it. Something pulled me toward it. An invisible force, a curiosity I couldn't explain. And then I saw it. A figure standing just inside the door, hunched over, back to me. I froze. For a second, I thought it was just one of the crew members. But then I saw the way it moved. Unnatural, jerky, like its limbs weren't quite right. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. I was glued to the spot, staring at whatever that was. And then it moved. Not towards the door, but towards the vanity table. That's when I saw it again. The thing under the vanity. I had heard rumors, but I never thought it was real. Now, I could see it clearly. Long, clawed fingers creeping out from under the table, reaching, grasping at something. The air around it felt wrong, thick, like the room had been holding its breath for years. I quickly turned around and ran. No, sprinted away from that door. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I had just seen, but I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to see it again. But what happened next took things to a whole new level. The night of the Chromatica ball in Paris was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The stadium was alive with energy, screams, bright lights, the pulse of 1,000 voices singing in unison. It was magical in a way. You could feel the anticipation in the air, the electricity that flowed through the crowd and buzzed backstage. The crew was running around like usual, focused and busy. There was something comforting about the chaos. It was familiar. The sound of footsteps, the chatter on walkie-talkies, the distant hum of music seeping through the walls. It was all part of the rhythm, the dance that made everything come together. I'd been working on the tour for a few weeks now, and by then, I thought I'd gotten used to the scale of it, the magnitude of the show. Lady Gaga's presence was larger than life, but that was no surprise. What I didn't realize, though, was how easily the world behind the curtains could slip into something else entirely. How easily I would fall into that world and lose sight of everything that felt safe. That night, I was sent on a small errand, one of those tasks that seemed harmless enough. I was tasked with delivering a set of costumes to the dressing room, helping with last-minute adjustments. Simple, right? At least, that's what I thought. I remember the sound of my shoes clicking against the hard concrete as I made my way down the long corridor behind the stage. There was a chill in the air that night. Nothing overwhelming, just a slight coolness that seemed out of place, but maybe it was the nerves. I had been working for days without much rest, and I was running on autopilot. As I neared the dressing rooms, I could feel the tension creeping in. It wasn't that I was nervous about the task. I had done this before, but tonight, there was something different, something off in the atmosphere. It wasn't the usual buzz of the crew, the familiar sounds of people rushing to get things ready for the show. It was quieter somehow, more still. And the closer I got to Gaga's dressing room, the more I could feel it. It wasn't just the lack of sound. It was the air. And it felt thick, like something was pressing down on me. The walls seemed to close in just a little tighter, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I tried to push it out of my mind. It's just the nerves. It's just the pressure of the show, the weight of everything happening right now. I tried to steady my breathing as I approached her door. The door that always seemed to stand a little too still, even though there was no lock on it. The door that always felt like it was waiting for something or someone. I knocked once, no response. I could hear faint music playing from inside, something heavy, driving, like the beat of her songs. Not unusual. Gaga was always rehearsing, always in her own world when she prepared for the stage. But then, I knocked again, more urgently this time. I was getting anxious. I knew she had a strict schedule, and I didn't want to keep anyone waiting. The door wasn't locked, so I pushed it open, a little too quickly, a little too eager to get the job done. And there she was, Gaga, standing in front of a mirror, fully dressed in the costume for the night's performance. It was almost too much to look at, her silhouette, the bright lights bouncing off the shimmering fabric, the sharp lines of her shoulders and the curve of her figure. She was everything everyone said she was, confident, graceful, radiant. But I could tell even then, there was something more to her, something that didn't belong to this world. She turned around as the door creaked open, and for a moment, I felt like I was in a dream, like I was seeing a goddess, something too perfect to exist. "Hey," she said, a warm smile spreading across her face, though her eyes didn't quite match the brightness of her lips. "You need something?" I froze. It wasn't that I was starstruck. It was just the overwhelming weight of the moment. The way she stood there, so composed, so untouchable. It made me feel small, insignificant, like I had just stepped into an entirely different universe. I couldn't find the words at first. I have the costumes you requested," I stammered, holding them up awkwardly as if they were some kind of offering. She smiled again, but this time it seemed distant, a little too forced. "Great, just set them over there." She gestured toward a velvet chair at the far end of the room. I moved, careful not to stare too long, but I couldn't help it. There was something about her, the way she moved, the way her eyes never quite seemed to settle. Something in the air felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint it. I set the costumes down on the chair, my hands trembling slightly. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, but there was a strange pull in the room, like I wasn't supposed to leave yet. I turned to leave, but as I reached for the door, something caught my attention. A noise, a scratching sound. It wasn't loud at first, but it was enough to make me pause. I glanced over my shoulder. Gaga was still standing by the mirror, focused on adjusting her hair. The scratching continued, though, growing louder now, like fingernails dragging against the floor. I should have left. I should have walked out, gone straight back to the crew, and never thought twice about it. But I didn't. I couldn't. I looked around the room, scanning the corners, the shelves, the space under the vanity. And that's when I saw it. There was a dark shape, a shadow really, moving at the edge of the room. It wasn't just a shadow. It was like something was trying to crawl out from under the vanity. Long, thin fingers wrapped in a skin that didn't look like skin at all. It seemed to twist, contort, like it was reaching for something, someone. The sound was louder now, like claws scraping against wood, and I could feel the air in the room shift. It was as if the temperature dropped, the very atmosphere going dense and cold. I turned back to Gaga, my heart racing, but she didn't seem to notice. She was still focused on the mirror, oblivious to the movement at the corner of the room. I wanted to say something, scream, anything, but I couldn't. I was frozen, like something had locked my body in place. The claws stopped scraping, but the feeling in the room didn't. It felt like the space was too small for whatever was in there with us. I took a step back toward the door, and that's when I saw it. The doorman. The man I'd seen by the door earlier. But he wasn't standing where he was supposed to be. He was just outside the door, staring at me. His face wasn't like it was supposed to be. His eyes, there were no eyes. Just empty, hollow sockets, and he was staring directly at me. I couldn't breathe. And in that moment, I knew. I knew something was terribly wrong. Something evil was crawling its way out of that room, and I had just stepped into its path. Suspense bridge. But that was just the beginning. I had no idea what I was about to face next, or how everything I thought I knew would crumble away in the blink of an eye. It didn't take long for the unease to settle in. The following night, I found myself working late again, helping set up for the Chromatica Ball's performance in Paris. The chaos backstage was familiar. Crew members rushing around, techs adjusting lights, assistants running between stations, everyone focused on the show. But something was different this time. The air felt heavier, more suffocating. The usual hum of activity was punctuated by an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't shake. It felt like the entire venue was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something wasn't right. I was on my way to the back of the stage when I saw a familiar face, a guest of Gaga's, someone who'd been hanging around with the team for a few days. He was an older man, well dressed in a tailored suit, with an odd, unsettling way of looking at people. I had seen him a few times before, but he was always quiet, always just standing in the background, watching, not talking much, not doing anything to draw attention. But tonight, he wasn't just standing in the background. He was staring right at me. And when I caught his eyes, those eyes, I felt the floor beneath me shift. It wasn't like a normal look. It was cold, hollow. His eyes seemed to pierce through me, but not in the way you'd expect. There was no warmth, no curiosity, just a strange sense of knowing, like he knew something I didn't. I tried to ignore it. It wasn't my business, and I had a job to do. But as I walked past him, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching my every move, following me. And when I glanced back, I saw him, his eyes still fixed on me, unblinking. It felt like his gaze was burning into my skin. I quickened my pace and turned the corner, hoping the feeling would pass, but it didn't. I couldn't get his face out of my mind. The way he stared, the way his expression never changed. It wasn't just a look, it was a warning. That's when I saw it. I was walking down a narrow corridor heading toward the backstage area when I noticed a door that had always been open before. The staff had passed by it 100 times, no problem. But tonight, it was locked. I stopped in my tracks, my pulse racing. The door wasn't locked. Not when I had been here just hours ago. I reached for the handle, a slight sense of dread building in the pit of my stomach. The door didn't budge. It wasn't like a regular lock. It was a heavy industrial-grade deadbolt, the kind that was never used for the staff rooms. This was Gaga's private space, the one she kept sealed off from the rest of us. But this felt wrong. It felt intentional. like whoever had locked it wanted to keep whatever was inside. Inside. I took a step back. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, and I turned to see a couple of crew members walking past. One of them, a production assistant I had worked with before, saw me standing there by the door. "Everything all right?" she asked, a little too casually. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just, trying to figure out what's going on with this door." She looked at me for a moment, her eyes flicking from the locked door back to me. Then she shrugged and kept walking, her pace quickening as she disappeared around the corner. But there was something in the way she looked at me, something that didn't sit right. It wasn't just that she was acting like it wasn't a big deal. It was that she didn't seem surprised by it. She just accepted it. I tried to dismiss it, but I couldn't. The door, her behavior, that man's eyes. And then I heard it. The faintest sound. A whisper. It came from the other side of the door, barely audible, but there. I pressed my ear to the cold wood of the door, trying to catch whatever it was. The whisper sounded like a conversation, but not a normal one. It wasn't in any language I recognized. The words were garbled, twisted, like they were coming from deep within the walls themselves. I pulled away quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it. I could feel the pull of something unnatural, something beyond the music and lights and the false glamour of the show. But what really unnerved me wasn't the whisper. It was the fact that no one else seemed to notice. No one else seemed to care. I walked down the hall, my pace quickening as I tried to shake off the growing dread. I passed more crew members. Some of them looked at me like they knew what I was thinking, but no one said anything. Everyone acted like it was just another night, just another show. But the deeper I went into this world, the more I realized that I was the only one who wasn't in on the secret. As I rounded the corner toward the backstage area, I spotted Gaga's personal assistant, a woman I'd worked with a few times before. She was standing near the entrance to her dressing room, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes darting around nervously. She didn't see me at first, and for a moment, I just watched her. Her posture was rigid, tense. She looked like she was waiting for something or someone. Finally, she looked up and saw me standing there. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Everything okay?" She nodded quickly, but the forced smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. There was something off about her. "Yeah, just busy. You know how it is." I didn't believe her, but I didn't press it either. I had learned by now that when you worked behind the scenes, you learned how to read the room. And right then, I could tell that something was very wrong. "Right," I muttered, stepping past her toward the other side of the room. I had just reached the doorway when she stopped me, her hand brushing lightly against my arm. The touch was soft, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Don't go in there," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the noise of the crew. "Not tonight." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I turned to face her, my eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" "It's just a costume change." She didn't say anything at first. Her eyes flickered toward the dressing room door, and I followed her gaze. The door that was always supposed to be open. The door that tonight was locked and sealed tight. "It's not just about the costumes," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "There's something in there. Just stay away." I stood there, frozen for a moment, staring at her. The unease from before suddenly felt like a weight on my chest. What was she talking about? What wasn't she telling me? Before I could ask another question, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of crew members, leaving me alone with my thoughts and that heavy, nagging feeling that something was horribly wrong. But that was just the beginning. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hiding behind those locked doors. Something that was going to change everything I thought I knew about this tour and about Gaga herself. The night of the performance, everything seemed too perfect. The sound was flawless, the lights blinding in their intensity, and Gaga herself, she was a force on stage, channeling everything she had into that performance. I watched from the wings, just another crew member lost in the haze of lights and sound. But there was something different about tonight. Something about the way the air felt. Like everything was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't see but could feel in my bones. The audience was roaring, caught up in the rhythm of the show. But I wasn't focused on the music. I wasn't focused on the crowd. I was focused on her dressing room. I know it sounds ridiculous. I was supposed to be helping with costume changes, making sure props were in place. I wasn't supposed to be standing there staring at that damn door. But I couldn't stop myself. That locked door, the one no one was supposed to go near. Something felt wrong. It was like the energy had shifted, pulling everything into an orbit of dread. I couldn't explain it, but every inch of me screamed that I needed to get away. Yet I couldn't move. It was like the air around me had thickened, pushing me back toward that door, drawing me closer. I felt the weight of it on my chest, suffocating. What the hell's going on? I kept asking myself, but I couldn't find the answer. I was about to turn away when I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. It wasn't a sound this time. It wasn't a whisper. It was movement. Movement inside the dressing room. It was subtle at first. I didn't know if I was imagining it, but I could see it, just barely. A figure shifting under the cracks of the door. Not a person. It wasn't Gaga. It wasn't any of the staff. It was something else. It wasn't supposed to be there. The moment I saw that figure, I felt my pulse quicken, my throat tightening. There was a darkness creeping through the cracks of that door. Something unexplainable. Something that shouldn't exist in a space like that. I tried to look away, to shake off the feeling, but it was as if that figure was calling to me, pulling me in. I took a step forward, and just as I did, I heard it. The distinct sound of something scraping. Not like fingernails on wood like I had heard before, but something heavier. A dragging sound like metal scraping against concrete. I froze. My whole body went rigid as I stared at the door. There was no denying it now. It was coming from inside that room. The sound was unmistakable, sending a shock of ice through me. My heart began to race. I felt the cold sweat on the back of my neck, my hands clammy. The sound stopped. I wanted to run, to get out of there, away from whatever was happening in that room. But instead, I stood frozen. And then I heard something else. A voice. A voice I didn't recognize. It wasn't Gaga's. It wasn't anyone's I had heard before. But it was there, coming from the other side of the door, barely audible. It was a whisper. I see you. My blood ran cold. That voice wasn't just talking to me. It felt like it was speaking through me, like it was in my head. I stumbled back a step, my heart pounding. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. And for a moment, I thought I was going to collapse, but I didn't. I stayed on my feet, standing there, listening to the voice echo in my skull. I see you. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a command. It was a warning. I couldn't make sense of it. Nothing made sense anymore. My vision blurred, and I blinked rapidly to clear the dizziness. And then it happened. The door opened. I didn't hear it at first, no creak, no groan of the hinges. One moment it was sealed shut, and the next, it was wide open. It wasn't like someone had unlocked it. It was as though the door had simply decided to open, slowly, unnaturally. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the dark space beyond it. There, in the shadows, was a figure. Not Gaga, not anyone I recognized. It was tall, unnaturally tall. Its body was twisted in ways that didn't make sense. Long, skeletal limbs bent in angles that shouldn't have been possible. The head was too big, the eyes empty, hollow, not even human. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. All I could do was stare. And that's when I saw it. The thing, the creature, whatever it was, lifted its head slowly, locking its gaze on me, and it smiled. But not in any human way. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, like it was capable of swallowing the entire room. The smile wasn't a smile. It was a grotesque mockery of one. In that moment, every instinct I had told me to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the thing standing in front of me. It stepped forward, one slow, deliberate step at a time. Its feet made no sound against the floor, as though it wasn't even touching the ground. It was floating, gliding toward me. And then, the worst part came. From the shadows, I saw something else. Something worse. Gaga. She stepped out from behind the thing, behind it as if she were part of it. Her face was pale, her lips curled into a cold, lifeless smile, but it wasn't her eyes that terrified me. It was the emptiness in them. The absence. Her hands were outstretched, fingers twisted in strange, unnatural ways. But it wasn't her touch I feared. It was the sheer presence of her. The way she moved like she wasn't fully there. Like she was being puppeteered by something dark, something powerful. She stepped forward closer to me, but the creature, her double, was the one that stood still. I realized then that it wasn't her I was seeing. Not the real Gaga. It was something else, something using her form. I turned to run. I had to get out of there, but my body wouldn't obey me. I stumbled back a few steps, panic clawing at my chest, but I couldn't escape. My feet felt glued to the floor. Gaga, or whatever that thing was, took another step, and the creature smiled again. It felt like everything in that room was closing in on me. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were all bending toward me, crushing me with an invisible weight. The air felt suffocating, thick with something dark and ancient. The last thing I remember seeing before everything went black was the creature's eyes. Those hollow black eyes, and that smile. Then came the real shock. What happened next tore everything I thought I knew apart, shattering my perception of what was real and what was something else entirely. The world didn't make sense anymore. Nothing felt real, not after that night. I couldn't shake the image of that creature, the twisted figure that had emerged from behind Gaga's dressing room door, its limbs contorted in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Its hollow eyes, that smile. It wasn't just something I saw. It was something that crawled under my skin, something that took root deep inside of me, twisting everything I thought I knew about reality. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, that it was some trick of the light, the stress of the tour, exhaustion eating at my mind. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. And every time I heard a whisper in the back of my mind, I heard that voice, the same voice from behind the door. I see you. It was like it was following me, haunting me, taunting me. Every step I took, every corner I turned, I could feel it there, watching. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was a shell of myself moving through the motions of the tour, but not really living. And every time I went near that dressing room, every time I heard the sound of the music bleeding through the walls, it felt like I was being pulled back into that space, back to the place where nothing was safe. The crew noticed, I'm sure of it, but no one said anything. No one ever said anything about what had happened. They just carried on like it was business as usual, as if they were all pretending it hadn't happened, as if they hadn't seen her, or it, the way I had. And that's when I started to realize something else. They knew. They knew what was in that room. They knew what was happening to Gaga, to her performance, to the tour, and they were all just playing along, pretending that it was normal. Like this was just part of the show. But it wasn't normal. It was never normal, and I couldn't pretend anymore. One night, I found myself walking down that same hallway toward the dressing room again. I wasn't sure why I was drawn there. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was desperation. But I couldn't stop myself. As I got closer, I noticed the lights flickering above me, buzzing erratically. The hum of the fluorescent lights was louder than usual, filling the silence of the empty hall with a strange static. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the cold sweat running down the back of my neck. I could hear it again, the faint scraping sound coming from behind the door. I knew it wasn't just my imagination. The sound was too real, too visceral. It was like something was trying to break through. I reached the door, my hand hovering just inches from the handle, and then I heard it. The whisper. It was soft at first, but unmistakable. The same voice from before. It was coming from inside the room. I see you. I know you're here. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. The voice wasn't just in my head. It wasn't some strange trick of the mind. It was coming from the other side of the door. I could feel it crawling under my skin, reaching into my thoughts. I wanted to turn around, to run, to get as far away as possible, but I couldn't move. My body wouldn't respond. I was frozen in place, my legs stiff, my mind racing with fear. Then the door creaked open. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't turned the knob, but it opened on its own, slowly, quietly, The darkness inside the room seemed to pulse, like it was alive. I could feel the air shift, thick and oppressive, like something was pressing against me from all sides. The scraping noise grew louder, more frantic, like it was desperate to get out. And then I saw it. Gaga! She was standing in the center of the room, facing the mirror. But it wasn't her. Not really. Her hair was matted, her face pale and hollow. Her eyes were wide, but there was no recognition in them, no warmth. Her hands were outstretched in front of her, fingers twitching, like she was reaching for something just out of reach. The figure I had seen before, the creature, the twisted version of her, was behind her, standing still, unmoving. But it wasn't just standing there. It was waiting for her to move. And then it did. It moved. Slowly, unnaturally. Its limbs shifted, its body bending in ways that weren't possible for a human. It lurched forward, but not toward her, toward me. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I realized something horrifying. It wasn't just her. It was using her. It was controlling her. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The creature moved closer, its jagged limbs clicking against the floor. The room felt smaller now, suffocating. I could feel the temperature dropping, the air thick with dread. And then I saw it. A dark, shadowy figure stood in the doorway behind Gaga. A figure I hadn't seen before. It was tall, taller than any human had the right to be. Its face was obscured by shadows, but I could feel its presence. It was watching me, waiting for me to make a move. In that moment, I knew I had to leave. I had to get out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. My body wouldn't respond. I was paralyzed, frozen in place by something I couldn't explain. Gaga turned toward me. Her face was blank, empty. Her eyes locked onto mine, but there was no recognition, no warmth. She didn't see me. She couldn't. The creature behind her, still wearing her form, took another step forward, and I could feel its gaze on me. It wasn't looking at me with any kind of curiosity or malice. It was just watching me, studying me. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't just a reflection. It was inside her. It was her, but it wasn't. And that's when it happened. That's when everything shifted. The lights flickered and then went out entirely. The room plunged into darkness. The air was heavy, suffocating, and I could hear the creature's breath, sharp and shallow, coming from right behind me. Then came the real shock. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Not a human hand. Not a soft, familiar touch. It was cold, lifeless. It gripped me with a strength I couldn't escape, pulling me toward the center of the room. I tried to scream, tried to push it away, but it was too strong. The grip tightened, and I felt myself being dragged toward that thing, that creature still wearing Gaga's skin. The darkness closed in. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It's not real. It's not real. The words echoed in my mind, but I knew deep down they weren't true. I knew what I was feeling was real, the terror, the suffocating weight of whatever was happening in that room. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of Gaga's voice, or at least the thing that sounded like her. You shouldn't have come in here. And that's when everything changed. I don't know if I'll ever be able to leave this behind. It's not over yet. It's not even close. The world was spinning and I was caught in it, helpless. I was running on instinct, my body moving faster than my mind could process. I had just seen her. No, not her. The thing that had taken her. The thing in Gaga's skin. The thing with those hollow eyes, that twisted grin. That's all I could see now. The air was thick with dread, my heart hammering in my chest, my legs aching with every step, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stay there. I don't even know where I was running to. I didn't care. All I wanted was to get as far away from that room, from that thing, from whatever was happening behind those closed doors. But the walls were closing in. The hallway seemed endless, stretching before me in ways that didn't make sense. I could feel it pursuing me, watching me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its face, that smile. The smile that wasn't really a smile, the twisted, grotesque mockery of a human expression. I stumbled down the hall, hearing my own breathing ragged in my ears. The sound of the chaos of the show, screams, music, voices, was muted now, distant. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart echoing in my skull, drowning everything else out. It was a blur, but I remember passing by crew members, seeing their faces twist into confusion and concern as I ran past. I heard someone shout my name, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't slow down. Then I felt it. A hand. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist, yanking me back so violently I almost fell. I turned to see who it was, my mind racing, but everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. It was one of the crew members, a guy who worked in props, I think. His face was pale, eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't need to. His grip was like iron, digging into my skin, his eyes never leaving mine. I opened my mouth to scream, to beg him to let go, but nothing came out. All I could do was stand there, frozen in terror. "Don't tell anyone," he whispered, his voice cold, devoid of any warmth. His words hung in the air like a dark command. "You don't know what you saw. No one else can know." His face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. Something that made me realize that this wasn't just a warning. This was a threat. I pulled at my wrist, but he wouldn't let go. The grip tightened, his fingers digging deeper into my flesh. "Do you understand me?" he asked, his tone so sharp it sent a shiver down my spine. I nodded quickly, too terrified to argue. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a negotiation. I was in over my head and I knew it. The terror that gripped me wasn't just the sight of her or the thing behind that door. It was the realization that whatever this was, whatever had been happening to Gaga, to everyone around me, it was bigger than me, and no one would ever believe me. He finally let go of my wrist, and I stumbled back, gasping for air. He didn't move, didn't look away. It was like he was waiting for something, like he was watching for me to make the wrong move. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't let him see the fear on my face. I turned and ran again, this time not stopping, not looking back. The next few hours are a blur. The adrenaline kept me going, but my mind was racing in 100 different directions. I knew something wasn't right, but every time I tried to make sense of it, it only got worse. The faces of the crew seemed to blur together. They acted like nothing had happened, like everything was fine. No one questioned why I was acting so strange. No one asked if I was okay. But I wasn't okay. None of us were. The entire production felt off. The smiles, the quick glances, the way everyone avoided talking about certain things. And then I realized something worse. It wasn't just the crew who were pretending. It was everyone. The guests, the people who were attending the show. They were in on it too. And they didn't know, or maybe they didn't care, that something was wrong. I could see it in their eyes. They weren't seeing the real Gaga. They were seeing something else, something controlled, something otherworldly. It wasn't just her dressing room. It wasn't just the creature in her place. It was the entire tour, the entire show, a masquerade, a facade. Everyone had become part of it. Every single person who walked through that venue, who cheered, who danced, they were all part of it, part of whatever twisted game was being played. I found myself avoiding people, avoiding everyone. I couldn't look at anyone the same way after that. I'd catch glimpses of the crew, and I could see it in their eyes. They knew what had happened, and they weren't talking. They weren't going to help. They were just as afraid as I was. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that creature's smile. I heard that voice. It was always there, inside my head, like a whisper in the dark. I see you. I started to isolate myself. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Every time I passed someone in the halls, I wondered if they were one of them, if they were under its influence. Was Gaga? Was she even Gaga anymore? Was there anyone left who could save us from whatever had taken hold of that tour? The nightmares started. They were worse than anything I had ever experienced. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. The dark figure would be standing over me. The thing in Gaga's skin would be there, smiling down at me, its empty eyes fixed on mine. I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't escape. And then, just when I thought I was losing my mind, when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. The lights in my hotel room flickered. At first, I thought it was just the electricity, but then I heard it. The scraping sound. It was coming from the walls, from inside the room, beneath the floorboards. And then, in the mirror, I saw it. A shadow. A figure standing behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. Just the dark, empty space of my hotel room. But I could still feel it. I could feel its presence. It was in the room with me, watching me. It was never going to stop. But what happened next took things to a whole new level. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend I wasn't a part of something that was far beyond my understanding. Something that was reaching into places where no one could escape. I should have never stayed. I should have walked away the moment I saw it. But now it's too late. The thing in her dressing room, it didn't just leave with the show. It's still here, somewhere, watching me. It's in every shadow, every whisper, waiting. And every time I hear her voice on the radio, every time I see her face on the screen, I know it's still out there, still wearing her skin. If I disappear after this, you'll know why.